Welcome to Physics 494, our special discussion today about a career in physics. It's for people in the STEM field, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, specifically for the physics majors, but really anyone of an interested or allied field, there's a lot that you should be able to get from here. There's a variety of materials and resources available to you, and I'm putting them in here. I will make sure that there are ways for you to get these notes and to get the links associated with these if you find a particular resource. It's a fairly comprehensive discussion of physics career development, meaning your professional development, things you should be thinking about as you chart your course. And so because it's so complete, I'm going to run through it fairly quickly, briskly. So please don't be worried. This will end up being a YouTube video. You can back up and watch it there. Okay? And let's, normally I love questions. Let's save our questions for the end in today's discussion. And for those of you in 494, be sure to feel free to discuss this on the message boards. Okay? So this is a quote that I found, and to be honest, I could come up with several anecdotes about this. This is the selling point of physics, but it's also for people who are physics majors something that can seem daunting. Physics is a really broad degree, meaning you can go into other kinds of interdisciplinary research. Why? Because you are grounded in fundamental concepts. You have practical skills. Theoretical, mathematical, experimental, building things, computational skills. So here's a particular quote by Kenneth Haas from the Ford Research Laboratories, but I could run through a variety of people who've said the physics degree is one that gives you a lot of different pathways. And we'll see this in a couple places shortly, but I want to remind you this semester in What Physicists Do, we had Planet Labs Chief Technology Officer Chris Bauschhausen talk about his physics degree opening up that entree into entrepreneurship. We've got a former student of Sonoma State who got her bachelor's degree, who's a CEO, a Chief Executive Officer, Z Hakamoglu, who spoke in the What Physicists Do series, who says she loves to hire physicists just because you can bring them in. Maybe they need a little training compared to the electrical engineer who can do the electrical work right away. But the physicist has the broad background to mean that they can pursue in this path, they can develop, they can be trained new things, and hopefully what they can do is end up in leadership positions. I also want to mention that we've had wonderful talks, if you can find it, the Ransom Stevens talks in this series where he's talked about being a physicist out there in the job market. So the thing I want to discuss is what people do, and I have these slides that say this is what people do with physics degree, but there's a few things in the talk today where I'll say either in the past or right now, Sonoma State is one of the excellent resources in this. And in one area, it's that we stay in contact with our students. So all of you should be in contact with us after you graduate. Sonoma State Physics and Astronomy Department in particular is in contact surveying, putting down on the web where our former students are, what jobs they have. In fact, an ultimate resource for this is What Our Graduates Are Doing page, and search on this for aerospace and see the hits come up if that's what's of interest to you. Search on medical physics or biophysics if that's what is interest of you, and just see all the different kinds of things that people do. Summarized in these two tables, which is graduates by field and position, kind of a rough description of the field. Computers is number one. That's something that I want everyone to be aware of. When we talk about what physicists do and what they become, it may not be that physics is the main name, the main word in the title of what they do in their field or their position. They're going to be engineers, teachers, managers, programmers or analysts, technicians, scientists, entrepreneurs. This is real statistics from our graduates, okay? And here the fields are computers, physics, optics, business, and so on. So you get this idea that the field can end up with a wide variety of things. And so what I'm doing on this page, and I'll move through it very quickly, but I actually went out and brought together a variety of sources for this talk. And this is my acknowledgement page. If I don't acknowledge them on the individual pages, I just want to put this down. This is fair use for me to just provide a lot of different things. But some people out there have samples of resumes, and I wanted to be able to put them in this talk. One thing I'm going to highlight is not this one. For some reason, that got highlighted. One thing I want to highlight is the new thing that I've added to this talk is materials that are coming out of the Society of Physics Students, the National Society of it, so at spsnational.org/careers toolbox. So this toolbox is something that you can download in PDF form. Their website is attractive and sort of easy to get started with, and I'll present a little bit of that to you in a couple of slides. So in terms of job resources, and I actually did highlight this one on purpose, spsnational.org/careers toolbox. This is not the listing of what jobs to apply for, what are the current jobs in the field. This is a set of things that are telling us which jobs are, which ways do you prepare yourself for getting a physics job. There's someone who was not here for this. They were here for what physicists do, and we just have to acknowledge that they did not read any of the flyer materials. So when we look at this, we see the American Physical Society, another national body, has a careers page. We have here, and I want to put this, a jobs page. Does any of the physics majors know that we have a jobs page that gives you ideas on one, two, three? Okay, we have a jobs page with 3 pages of detailed information of what you should be thinking about in terms of pursuing a job. Then there's this list of information about our graduates. We saw that just before. And I put up here the Sonoma Career Services Office. One thing that I'm going to use this material for is to start a dialogue with them so that they understand really what the broad variety of things that a physicist can do. So here's a clip from the Careers Toolbox webpage, and this shows you that they actually had money to do what they wanted to do, because here they actually were able to hire a graphic designer. And so this is a nice web page, and it has a nice set of data. And it's Tony Saucy who gave a talk at a conference that I was just at, and I'm borrowing her slides here in a few places to show you a few things. She put out there, where do physics students go after graduation? You saw on the previous slides and from our websites, you can learn about where our students go in their degree pathways. But when I see a figure like this, I tend to think about what our students do, and we know some go directly out into the workforce, right? And some students go off to training programs to do secondary education, so they want to get a teaching credential. And some go to graduate school. All the arrows end up in the same place. You end up out in the job market. But the pathways tend to be go off directly into the job market, go to a credentialing program, or go to grad school. And so Tony goes through a particular model, and she uses for the statistics to think about what 20 average physics students end up doing. And this is her graphic for that, is that about 40% of them enter the workforce. So we know that a great number of students are going to go directly into the workforce. They're not going to go to graduate schools or these kinds of preparations. In fact, this is the wrong place for this. In California, the high school teacher path is someone who is going to go on in schooling, because they're going to go through the teacher credentialing program, and we have a fine one here at Sonoma State. 60% enter graduate schools. These are averages. These skew a little differently for bachelor granting institutions such as ourselves. We tend to be more split 50-50 than this. And then when we look at which graduate school programs people are going into, yes, some of them are going into 7 out of 20, maybe go into physics and astronomy, but other go into other advanced degrees or engineering programs. So I know plenty of students have gone off into environmental studies or public policy from a physics degree. And I did not include these data in here in this really rich talk that I have, But what is one of the best degree programs for either med school or to go to law school? And it's physics. Physics students score, if you put those together, we're the top program for putting people into having good LSAT and MCAT scores. We're second place actually in both categories, but we're competing with economics and mathematics. So I'd say if you want to keep your options open, the degree program is physics. But of course, I'm not here to tell you that you should be taking physics. You're here because you are taking physics or you're in a allied field. People go off, they're going to go into private sector, STEM, that's going to be science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or they're going to go into non-STEM fields. They're going to maybe work at national or government labs. They're going to go into the military, and we have this in the rich history of our students, and we see this thing. One of the things, and we're not going to go too much into detail about which this book goes through, but it's downloadable as a PDF from that site, is that it goes through 8 areas to help you think about, 2 of which I'm going to talk here specifically. The rest of these I do talk about at some level because of my existing structure to this talk. But one is common job titles, because people go out and say, I Googled physics, or my parent Googled physics and saw there, what jobs is there? I see physics teacher. That's the only one that comes back with physics in the name. Right? So we've got to talk about if you're going off after 4 years, or maybe you're going into the job market after grad school of some kind, but you still want to know what kind of jobs are you going to be applying for. This is an area which I'll just touch on briefly that's discussed in here. The idea of talking, whether it's to your faculty members, parents, peers, or getting on the phone or sending emails to former graduates. Being very careful when you have these discussions, but informational interviews, not where you are trying to get a job at someone's firm, but where you are trying to understand what does it mean to go into biophysics? What was it like starting off in biophysics? This is something that you can do, and I would suggest you look at this and you talk to a faculty member before you start reaching out to people who are already in industry, but that's something you can do. Or our What Physicists Do series brings people who are doing interesting things into this room. You have a chance to talk to them before and after the talk and say, how did you get started in this field? This is the idea that you can have many ways of figuring out what is the right path for you. Networking is part of that as well. I'm going to say, of course, there's job search, knowledge and skills-based resume. I talk about that in my own materials. An effective cover letter, once again, I'll be talking about that. I will not be talking about interviewing. I know there was a mock interview today. I think that's what I heard in the hallway. Is that right? No.
No. Target was
okay. Knowledge and skills assessment. This is the other one. Because if there's a number one thing that any undergraduate has difficulty with in resumes or interviews is knowing that the person on the other end does not want a list of your classes. They want an understanding of your skills. And so this goes for the resumes, but this goes for starting way back. When you start thinking about how you're going to market yourself, because it's marketing, when you're going to market yourself to potential employers, you need to let them know what are you capable of. And I'll talk about that briefly. The first thing here is in jobs. I've already shown you the data from what people do at, who have gone through our physics programs at Sonoma State. But here I wanted to show you job titles. This is from the American Institute of Physics survey. When you graduate from here, you're going to be pestered by them. They contact every graduating physics major across the country, and they collect data. And so they find out what are the names of the jobs that people who had physics degrees got. And they're in these kind of different areas. Engineering, look how many of the titles have engineer in them. Okay? We are not engineers. And with due respect to engineering and what it trains people to do, engineering is a wonderful training for a person to be able to understand and build to specifications. A physicist training is supposed to, and in my way of thinking, you're supposed to learn how to set specifications. You're supposed to look at things in a big picture and understand it and break it down into how to solve a problem. So physicists are problem solvers. That means they're ideal for things that we consider engineering. But you want to keep your mind open to the fact that this is the name, but you want to sell that you have a strong technical, sure, background that says that you can do engineering, but really that you can problem solve, that you can work in groups, the kinds of things that our students do. So optical engineer, really, you should go through our optics program, right? To go out and be in optical engineering. These are the kinds of examples of it. But you're going to go off into computer programming for many things. Why? Because physics, either it's a discipline where you really need to know the physics and code up physics. This is in all kinds of simulations, all kinds of development in this area. Or it's just because you've got technical skills in computer science, but you're a physicist, and that means we worked you through public speaking, and you have all these other immeasurable set of skills that we put together in what we call a physicist, and you're ideally suited to that. Here's the one that includes physics in the name, the high school physics teacher. We have the phys tech program here on campus. There are lots of supports for making this happen. It is critical to the future of our country that some of you end up as excellent, well-trained high school physics teachers. And of course, other research and technical jobs, quality assurance, a research associate, lab technician. These are the kinds of job titles that people were getting in their first year out on the job market. And all of these that we're looking at here are basically STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics positions. So I'm showing you some from Tony's talk again here on the key to success. I just want to say the single most important tool is articulating what your skills are. It's you as a younger student, it's often hard to know what is it that I learned? What is it that this person wants to hear me say? A student will be working in a lab and they'll go, yeah, I'm doing science. Or they will say, oh yeah, I spend all my time and I'm soldering. And what they won't say is they won't put it in a framework that lets the person on the other side of the conversation know that they have a big picture view of something. Oh, I am soldering on a prototype board that uses a special language that we're using to control hardware and software for remote sensing. Okay? That's the kind of thing that you say that someone on the other end of that conversation goes, this person's got their stuff together. They know what they're talking about. They have technical skills and they can talk about it. So whatever your discipline is, this is where it's not discipline specific, but whatever your discipline is, don't talk about, oh, I took this great class. Talk about the skills and the things you did with those skills in the class. So here's a set of common skills, and I actually couldn't edit this. This was a PDF, so I don't want to put questions on others because we're either not going to ask you what they are right now, but I just want to say exclamation mark, exclamation mark. This is not a complete set of your skills, but working with laboratory instruments. I know that if I were you and headed out into the job market or to graduate school, I would want to say that I studied some particular material with the scanning electron microscope in our lab. And I wouldn't just want to say I learned how to use a scanning electron microscope. I'd rather use an action verb and say, I use that to study, to quantify what. So tell that as a story, that you use technical skills and advanced laboratory instruments to make important measurements. Conducting research, communicating complex ideas. Communicating is only up on this once. I would have it up on here many times. You can write. You can get up in front of people and you can talk. You can talk to a technical audience. You can talk to the general audience. Okay? These are the things that you have going for you that perhaps some other of your compatriots don't. Problem solving, critical thinking, this is often listed as the #1 thing that people want when they're looking to hire, and not just in physics, just what they look for. When you're hiring someone, I want someone who can come in and problem solve, and I want someone who can work well with others. Yes?
What could you point to illustrate that you can problem solve other than just saying, yeah, I can do it?
Very good question. For example, problem solving, I would say give a concrete example. And when we talk about resumes, you want to say what your skills are, but you always want to, it's not just a list. And I'll have examples which have lists, but it shouldn't be just a list. It should be problem-solving skills as exemplified by the time that I figured out the, this isn't how I would phrase it, but the time where I figured out the kinematic mount, which is a mount to keep something in place in a perfect three dimensions, and it was wrong and I had to readjust and move a spring to another location. I used my mechanics physics course to be able to solve that problem. Okay, that's too long, but you can think like that's the story that you realize, how do I tell that story quickly? Problem solving, can solve mechanical issues in the lab using a combination of mathematical tools and modeling, right? Then that's a bullet item on your resume, or it's the way you talk about it when you're in what we call the elevator speech, when you have 2 minutes, 1 minute, 4 minutes to impress somebody, okay? You need to be able to talk about things in that way. So how do you build these skills? Well, number one, we have a capstone program. All of you will do research with us in the physics program. But there are other ways to get involved. There are other times to get involved. If you're working in our public viewing nights as docents, you should be taking advantage of, I operated telescopes. Okay, that's good. Operate is a good verb. But you want to say, I operated telescopes and gave presentations to small groups. Okay, all of a sudden someone's going, oh, this person got skills in doing this particular things. What physicists do, these are job opportunities that we have in the department, lab assistants. What do we have over the summer, the McQuillan and Hitchwas summer internships? So this is for those of you asking, how can I find some summer research opportunities? There are many. There are 2 named paid positions. There are many others because of Dr. Lynn Kaminsky running a fairly large education and public outreach effort. These are things that you can look at doing over the summer to augment what your skills are. If I tell you about it in general, and I don't know when people are going to be watching this video, but the deadlines for summer internships are January through March, and so apply as soon as possible. And so for this room right now, that means you've got to scour and see what's left and what's available. But you should look at it. The definitive sites for this, and they keep changing. And I will say at one point, Sonoma State had a really good site because Joe Ten, who started the What Physicists Do series, took all the flyers he got in the era of mailings. He would take those mailings and make a list for the students. I could even still point you to our site for it, which is showing everything current as of 2008, what the jobs were available. The interesting thing about it is that that list is still pretty true. This campus, this other campus, this other campus, this national lab are the places that are offering summer work for physics majors. But now the main place I'd send you to is SPS National again, and their job site, jobs.spsnational.org/jobs. Now, some of these are permanent jobs, but you're looking for the summer jobs. A better list, but that I just saw today, is now going to not be active anymore, but it's an easier browsable list of the summer research opportunities, was at thenucleus.org. This is also available through another physics place called Compadre. And then a lot of these are research experiences for undergraduates, REUs, and those are sponsored by the National Science Foundation, so there's this link. If you only take one thing away from this, search for jobs or summer research at spsnational.org, and you will find a list of those. I'm going to move on. As I said, we're trying to get through a lot of material, and also, as I said, to start a dialogue. Take this information, your bullet points, think it over, talk to your classmates, talk to your professors, talk to your advisors, talk to your parents, get working on this. But I want to give you some background about what is this world of applying for things. There's a cover letter / personal statement. Sometimes there's both a cover letter and a personal statement, meaning When I applied for a job like this, I had a teaching statement, a research statement, and they didn't ask for it, but of course I wrote a cover letter, right? Because I want that brief, 1 page, at most 2 pages, way to show that I know my stuff, and then add those other documents behind it, okay? So the cover letter is important. Sometimes that can be your personal statement. Sometimes you might want to just throw in a cover letter to show you've got your stuff together, okay? As I said, a chance for you to demonstrate your writing skill and your fit with that particular job. So these are personalized, so are the resumes, okay, as we talk about this. Letters of recommendation, and I'll talk about this in another slide, but you are more responsible for the letters of recommendation than you know. This is not a small task, getting good, positive letters of recommendation and making sure they get to the people on time. So just take that in. I'm going to tell you about this in a later slide. CV, when I started this talk, I was using the language that I was used to and the kinds of ways that I documented my career. But I stayed in academia, and some of you will, so you should know the language for that is curriculum vitae, or the course of your life. And it's a little bit like a resume, except that it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you include all sorts of stuff. And of course, that's at cross purposes with a resume. A resume might be the only thing that someone scans on their desk before they make a decision. And so you want your resume to be short and to the point. So that's different than a CV, but both of them are going to list your skills, your background, your education, and so on. Okay, so I'm going to move on. The cover letter purpose, it introduces you to the potential employer or to the person running a particular program. Demonstrates a fit. I'm going to show you this in the examples, but the examples that I showed you are from a site that I found, but they actually use the special way that I've always written these, which is always to pair, you guys want this, and I want this. And my skills and what you want are perfect together. That's what you want to find in the job, in the internship, whatever you're looking for. You want to allow them to see how you make a perfect fit with this. This part that says allows elaboration on information in the CV or resume. This is important. Let's say we're talking about the cover letter that goes along with a grad application and you did poorly in a class. The cover letter is your chance to address why you did poorly in the class, because you may not get their full attention if there's something. Now this really is going for these kinds of school applications, grad school applications, but they have your transcript. So the cover letter in that case is really important to address any possible issues. We can talk about that more later. But it's also a writing sample, and that's so important. If I see a messy, sloppy, even if I just see misspelled words or homonyms, the wrong word, I'm wondering, did this person think about this carefully enough? Do they care about even applying for this job? And that seems problematic. You're like, I'm a physics major, my skills are here, it's not about writing. It is basic competency, basic literacy, and it is important. And so I'm going to give you some tips on how to make sure your writing is good. And that is really important. A few things. Address it to someone as specific as possible, hopefully a name to the cover letter, whoever's running the particular program. Otherwise, something to, dear members of a search committee. Write in first person. I have to write that because scientists sometimes write in the third person. And you should get, this is not a time, and I don't know if there's ever a time. I was sort of taught there was never a time. But I liked, the data will show. It's like, no, you're going to show with the data. And especially in resume, you are going to show what you are capable of. So make sure you write in first person, not passive voice. High quality paper, customize each letter. Okay, this is important. Customize each letter. If I see one and it looks like a form and they are applying to other research experiences for undergraduates or other internships, as opposed to, oh, they think that they might have a chance to work with Dr. So-and-so and she's an expert in this particular area. Okay, if I read that in the cover letter, then I know this person wants to work at my institution. So that's important. Customize each one of them. I'll talk about proofread. Avoid cliches. Not everyone will say this, and you can certainly bring your personality to a cover letter, but I know I tend to roll my eyes every time I see, since I was a young child, I always wanted to be something. I mean, that's nice, but you have a limited amount of time. I see it in papers where I ask people to write science papers, and they give me their opinion without valid justification. This is tight, dry writing. I mean, you can make it more fanciful, but do not fill it with cliches. Get to the point. Say exactly what you're trying to say. Say, I am a good fit because of these skills, and list the skills. That may seem like, oh, that's not as flowery and poetic as I want. And I would say, no, in the cover letter, get down to business, show that you can communicate quickly and effectively. So, suggestions specifically address items mentioned in the job ad, meaning when you're looking at job ads, make sure you underline it, highlight it, mimic that language back to them. If you do, they know, or they don't even know that you care about it. You're speaking their language, and it feels comfortable to them. So if I'm on a hiring committee, I see this language, and I go, oh, that's what we're looking for. I mean, it's kind of a cheat, right? But that's important. I said, take a little risk here, show who you are. That's good. Like I said, I would be careful of cliches and things they've heard a million times before. But it's not a problem to let yourself through on the page. Demonstrate your knowledge of the institution, department. That means research it. If it's applying for a job, know what they make. Say that you're interested in this job. You're not sure if you would be coming into their bio-optics division or their bioacoustics division. Okay? You say stuff like that and they're okay, this person is interested here. This has a lot to do with interviews. We're not going to be discussing that today because we have too much to discuss. I like this. You are writing to apply for blank position. Starting off matter of fact. You don't have to get out of the gate with some wonderful way of stating something. Get to the facts. I'm applying for this position. That's fine. Discuss what attracts you to the position. This is the thing where I talk about making the fit explicit, making the way that you work for that position, that job opportunity, that internship, that scholarship is important. In the middle, you want to get in these things about being a physics major. Emphasize your laboratory experience. Match your skills, your coding, your experience, your philosophy to the positions. Draw the connections for them. And I said this, use topic sentences. I'll show it to you on a couple examples. But what I'm saying here is don't be afraid to say something that is really explicit. The reason I fit this is my experience in upper division physics labs. That's a topic sentence. That's a way that somebody knows what's going to happen after this. I'm going to now learn from my applicant what their experiences in upper division physics labs allows them to do. Okay? Make assertions about your experience. Use topic sentences as signposts. And then this goes back to your question earlier, Wes. Give concrete examples to support your assertions. You don't just say, I can problem solve. You say, I can problem solve. In fact, we had to get a part out the door in under 2 weeks. And I led the team to finish the specifications. These sorts of things. I'm making examples up on the fly. But you can see you need to put that in. Discuss what you have to offer the organization. Show enthusiasm. Okay, it's okay to let your personality emerge. Self-promote. The job search is no time for modesty. The corollary with that is never fabricate anything. Right? I mean, that's a way to be lost to the world. That's a way to be lost to having your letter writers write you recommendations. If you make an assertion that is not true, that's terrible. Okay? But you are in the business of marketing yourself. So please feel free to self-promote. Please realize, don't be so humble to not realize, oh my gosh, I spent all that time in the summer working on that project, and I thought I didn't do that much. But when I describe it to a peer, it does sound like I'm awesome. Take that part, that little part of your head that said, wow, that was awesome what I did, and use that to write these letters. Okay, closing paragraphs. I love this, that this is stating, finish up with stuff. Like, I wrote this sentence for you. Letters of recommendation are being sent under separate cover, meaning go ahead and let them know. This idea that a cover letter looks like a person who's in charge of their own fate, that looks like someone who I want to hire. And so it seems like it's dry and boring, but I've always done that. I've always written stuff where I'm telling you exactly what you're getting. You're getting these other documents. Sometimes I make a bulleted list. These are included in here. This is what's coming later. The cover letter, which you should keep to 1 or 2 pages, doesn't have a lot of room, but you start off with something, letting them know about you. You have these middle paragraphs with concrete examples of the ways that you fit their job, and you finish up with practical matters. And that's a really competent cover letter. Convey your enthusiasm. I'll move forward. So, in terms of all that writing, and this is a slide that I have borrowed, and I have put up the source somewhere, but this is great. This is a pun. I'm not big on puns, but I left the thing in there. It's writing tips. So the second best writing tips you ever got was to read your draft out loud. There are things that I read as a professor who gets assignments that knows that no one possibly read this, even in their mind. But knowing that if you read it out loud, you're not going to have and next to each other. They're on the page. I'm looking at it, and were next to each other in what you wrote to me. I'm going to see it, and you're not going to see it. You have to read it out loud. And better than you reading it out loud, the best writing tip you ever got was to get a friend to read your draft out loud. I will tell you about my personal experience of applying for graduate schools, where I was, young once, and I had I had 20 different departments, programs all over my floor of my apartment, and I had my friend over, and I said, what? How am I going to figure out grad school? And so it's this thing where I had a friend who I could bounce those ideas off of. Which of these schools make sense? Let's make it down a reasonable set. I can't send off 20 applications. I still sent off too many applications. But I got into my first choice, so I was happy. But you got to have a set of choices. Well, you got to have someone there to hear what you're saying. So whether it's deciding on where to apply or it's to read your work out loud, if you hear them say that, you go, that's not what I meant to say. It's because they're reading it as it's written on the page, and you had commas that you didn't put on the page that were in your head. You had pauses. You knew that the writing was right. If you have difficulty with your writing, it's because you're not reading it aloud, or better yet, having someone else read it aloud. Because when they do, you go, oh, that's not what I meant. So do that with the cover letter, with the resume. So here's a bad cover letter sample. You don't know how many times you get something like this, where it's just something that's, take advantage of, even if they don't have a thing saying send a cover letter, you send a cover letter. Do you see what I'm saying? And someone might say, I'm applying for the job, thank you. Well, no, you lost your chance of showing you that you're thinking about this. Plus the to whom it may concern. Here's some good examples. I've got, I think 3 in here in cover letters. I need to talk about resumes, but cover letters here. I wish to apply for this position. See how that's dry? I mean, it's just practical. I want to apply to this. I'm in the process of completing. I'm giving background. The subject of my dissertation is this. I know that I will be a productive contributor to your group. I always like that way of saying I'm going to be good for you. Okay? Let's look at this. Let's see if there's a topic sentence I don't memorize this one. So is there a topic sentence? Does the person who's reading this, do they keep reading this? During my graduate research, I've developed a tremendous interest in and passion for the research in the area of host pathogen response and immune regulation. Okay, I am learning. What is the person who's applying, what they're doing? This isn't a physics one, but it's clearly a STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. I have fully defined the first complete, boom. Okay, defined. This is action that they did. mouse model had allowed us to do this. Specifically, I have studied this. I have found this. This is the cause of this. Additionally, I have collaborated. Okay, all these words in here are things that I have done. Oh, I collaborate well. I have found, and I'm not going to read everything here. Let's look at this. Another paragraph. That was technical background. Now the person's saying, I'm a highly motivated, creative individual, works well independently as well as collaboratively. They're trying to hit all the marks. This is broader. This is not the technical stuff, but now they're trying to say, I'm good in this as an employee in any background. Quick to learn techniques, strong interest in this. Let's see if it has Wes's idea of concrete examples. For example, I'm particularly intrigued by this. Okay, connecting it to the person. That's one of the things I said, connect it to their research. Maybe they should have a few more things where it's concrete examples of how they work well in groups, right? But they're also trying to get it in under 2 pages. And then here's this last thing I told you. Put in something. I've also submitted this and this, right? It's a real pattern. It's one that if you start to get to know well, yours will stand out. Your application will stand out amongst the rest if you get that stuff. Here's another example. Probably going to start with something about, I want to apply for this. I'm a good fit. Let's see. I have found yours things fascinating. I will be able to contribute expertise and develop and expand my understanding. You see how I'm helping and I'm growing. I love that sentence always existing in this first paragraph. In the second one, it's X-ray crystallography. Well, we have that here, right? So these are kind of skills you want to list in here, and then finishing it up with this concrete stuff. This one I only wanted to put in here was a cover letter sample about an unadvertised academic postdoc. But this is true for everything. I mean, and my first and only postdoc before I got a research astronomer position was a job that didn't exist. I applied. I was talented. I wanted to work at a particular place, and I wrote the director of that observatory a letter saying, this is why you should consider hiring me. I got a job out of it. So you should think about that. You should think about that when someone speaks in what physicists do and they maybe don't have an REU, but you're interested in their work. You should think about writing letters to people and letting them know about your competencies. This is just an example of that. It's in the record. I'll move on. Okay? You can apply for things that don't even exist. So let's talk about letters of recommendation. As I said, there's a lot on you about letters of recommendation. The first thing on you is that you need to ask the people ahead of time. It is one of the worst blunders to assume someone's your letter writer and not let them know before every time you are asking them to write a letter. You can't have them written you a letter in the past and then all of a sudden they get a request for another letter. Okay? You have to be ahead of that game by hopefully weeks to let them know, oh, you know, I'm applying again. Oh, Professor Severson, I know we haven't spoken since I went to grad school, but my work with you was neat and I still want to use you as a letter writer while I apply for my first postdoc. You know, that's a letter that an email I'm expecting to see eventually. But I need that before out of the blue I get an application, okay, from someone saying, I want to hear about this student. So you have to be in contact with them. This was advice given to me. When you ask someone to write you a letter of recommendation, you don't ask them to write you a letter of recommendation. You ask them if they are willing to write you a positive letter of recommendation. Okay? The person on the other end of that request has the responsibility of writing an accurate letter of recommendation to whatever third party you're applying to. And so you need to find out in not so subtle language whether they will write you a positive letter of recommendation. Okay? Let me make that clear again. You've got to find out if they're going to write you a positive letter of recommendation. Will you write me a strong letter of recommendation? If they tend to say, I don't know your work as well as some other people, that might be that other person's way of letting you know that you should probably look elsewhere to get a stronger letter of recommendation. Okay? Tough words, but I got to tell them to you. Okay, then when they say, yes, of course I'll write you a positive letter of recommendation, then make it easy for them. I always want to get your writing samples, meaning a draft of your resume, a draft of your cover letter. I may or may not have time to help you write that letter. But if I read what you've written, I know your connection to the job. I am going to write a better letter of recommendation on your behalf. So communicate with your letter writers. Give them details about the position. Give them the due date. Check in with them. Give them a schedule. Here's the due date. It's March 30th. Is it, okay, for some reason, I don't know. It's March 30th this month is a due date. I'm going to, will you give me a positive letter? Yes. Okay, you will. I'm going to contact you in 2 weeks to see how you're doing on writing the letter. Now, you don't want to bother them too much, but it's all right to write them the day before the thing is due and say, have you had a chance to send out that letter? So that's another thing where you're responsible. Give them as much material on you as possible. Maybe I need to know about what your work schedule is like when you were working with me in that project. Give me background information to understand all the things that you do. Finally, even for some, it's hard to imagine, but I did just have one that still required me to mail something rather than email something. So provide me the envelope. Make it pre-addressed. Make it easy so that it actually gets out and gets out on time. Contact them as the due date comes, and then check with them again. That's your job. Okay? And it's one of our favorite things to do, to write letters of recommendation. This is not to give you the impression that letter writers are ogres, but it is to say that it's still your responsibility to make sure those letters go out on time and are positive. Okay, I'm going to talk about this in terms of resumes, not so much CVs. Remember curriculum vitae. So I pulled all these other things to the second slide. A resume may just have contact information, education, and experience. Okay? Other things that it could have, a resume could have honors and awards. Maybe it doesn't apply, but maybe you're really have an awesome series of honors and awards. Or maybe it's directly related to their field, or a publication that's directly related to their field. A CV will tend to have all of these. It will have community service, academic service, research interests, and so on. This is not for the resume. But some of these could be for the resume if there's a way in which it connects. But really you want the resume to be 1 page, not even 2. And that's a crazy document, right? A 1-page document that you want to have get you in the door for a job or an internship. The contact information is really simple. Just make sure it looks clean and clear. This is where people who like to choose fonts and have it look beautiful, you can spend your time on that. Make the top part that's your contact information the beautiful thing you want it to be. Okay? Because everything else needs to be kind of bullet lists. So it's not going to be as beautiful. All right? This thing, don't include age, sex, race, marital status, or citizenship status. I just saw one that had marital status on it. I was thinking, I wanted to tell the person, number one, I think many of these you're not allowed to ask as an employer. But it should be off the table. None of that should be included. Okay? And so you might see some resumes and examples that say, oh, I'm female and 24 and married and I'm a U.S. citizen. Take all of that off. Now, some places, Lawrence Livermore National Lab, might need to know if you're a U.S. citizen. But I would pull all of that stuff off. Birthplace, that's old school. And many of them, it's illegal for me to ask. So I don't really want to see it. Okay. Education section. Well, you want to write down that you got your degree or in your process of getting your degree at Sonoma State. So expected graduation date if you're doing it now. Dissertation, capstone, title, and advisor. It could say graduation, it could say Sonoma State, BS, physics and astronomy. It might be worth it to put one line underneath it going physics capstone, water reclamation from the air, comma, advisor, Dr. Qualls. Okay, that fits on one line, and all of a sudden they know you did a capstone, like a senior thesis. They know that you did this research and you got taken care of. Okay, so something like that is really important. If you're not, if those of you who are not physicists, whatever you do that's exemplary in your degree program, you could put it in that one line right underneath, this is your degree you got. Yes?
When you say you have a bullet about GPAs down there,
Yeah.
is it favorable to say your overall GPA and then next to it, if that's not so great, say your physics GPA or some other special GPA?
So now I've seen them with GPAs and without. I'm taking this slide in particular is from a source where the list already said don't include GPAs. I thought about it and I added this text, which is though you can include it if it's in your favor. And even if your physics is, if you don't, some places may request it. So if you're reading the job ad and they're requesting it, you put your GPA down and then parentheses 3.46 in physics. People go, oh, physics is hard. They got their 3.46s in physics, and that's why their overall GPA is whatever it is, or if your GPA, whatever's good or bad for you, you know. And what I'm saying is, other than responding to what they're requesting, in terms of what you write down in terms of GPA, of course you can make it be whatever is most favorable for you. Once again, the idea is you're advocating on your behalf. That's fine. I want you to do that. Do not lie. Right? Don't put down something that's false. But within that, if they didn't ask, and that's one of your weakest points, don't do that. If you're applying to grad school and it's one of your weakest points, they're going to get a transcript. Detail it in the cover letter. Make sure you address your GPA in the cover letter for grad school, if it's not good. If it's good, maybe you include it there in the cover letter anyways. Okay? But if it's bad, make sure you discuss what courses were bad and why that won't be a problem in grad school. That's why the cover letter is so important. Okay, we're still on the resume though. Experience section. Relevant experiences. This is more for CVs. You may include teaching versus professional, but use bullets to highlight tasks. Use action verbs. I'm going to go through a slide that shows you action verbs. Just know that you should include those everywhere that you can. If you could start every one of your bullet points with an action verb, saying, built this, designed this, okay? And that's your resume. That's a strong resume. Okay. Tips on writing up the experience. This demonstrate, don't tell. This is this idea that it should be, at some levels, concrete. It's, you want people to know that you work well in groups. You probably want, when the bullet list's not, I work well in groups, but to say, led team of 3 people designing this. Okay, led a team of 2. Had responsibilities for a junior member of the lab. And training a junior member of the lab. You see how those things are demonstrating. Link actions with results. This is the thing that students often have difficulty with. I soldered something. No. You soldered, you could say, but I built a board in the lab to measure something. Okay? The something is you want to probably still elaborate on. Speak the language of your audience, so that's, if these are technical things, include the technical things. Talk about which languages you coded things in, if that's examples of things that you did. And which ways can your experience help you in working with this other organization. Just make sure that those things seem concrete. Yes?
I'm writing down the last bullet point, sorry.
You're writing down the last bullet point. I'm going to move on, but I would suggest that you look at these notes, which will be available, and the video's available. Okay. The hierarchy of verbs. So I found this. This is great. Leader verbs. Created, founded, initiated, proposed, managed, directed. These are some examples. Yes, taking photos of this slide is a good slide to take photos of. I see that. Associate. Okay? Know what you should say. Know that a student who worked with me said that they designed the optical system for Kapow. And our department chair said they're using this kind of action verb, and the department chair thought that really they should be using these kinds of action verbs. The truth is, we trained the students so that I felt perfectly comfortable with them using the leadership action verb. But know what you did in the lab and know your place within your lab group. There are times where if you said, I created something, and it's not, it's your advisors, that's wrong. And that will come back to haunt you. Okay? So find where it's right in here. Did you coordinate this? You didn't start the idea, but you coordinated it. Or can you say, I created a subroutine for the piece of software. Okay? You did not create the software that magically measures the magnetic field on top of my head. Okay? You coordinated that project, but you created the subroutine. Okay? So you see how you pick and choose these words. Implemented, executed. I'm just going to say them out loud because it's worthwhile. Executed, conducted, analyzed. I use that all the time. Analyzed, researched, fielded, handled. You see we're getting lower down the chain here. Responded, ensured, I maintained. But sometimes these are your responsibilities, you know? I ensured that the tables were clean at the steakhouse when I was in high school, okay? That's all I was doing then, all right? I was not up here, okay? That's fine. But explain where you are and try to find a small topic where you can use the leadership verbs, okay? Reference sections at the end. This can just be a list. You don't have to include addresses, but you probably want to. Maybe you even include it on the cover letter if you want your resume to be, but it's usually on a resume. You probably have like your 3 references and just give the names, email addresses, affiliations. Okay? Dr. Severson, Sonoma State University, phone number, email. Okay? Try to make it on 1 line. Okay. The writing process for all of these things, and this is the writing process for the resume, is, you should be reflecting on, are these things obvious, the things that you want to convey? Your skills, your strengths, are they concise? If I pick 2 of these things out of here that I'd say, you want to say, did I discuss my skills and strengths? Did I make them obvious? Did I do it concisely? Okay? Neat and correct in detail to me is editing and reviewing at the end. That's what you want to do. So here's some do's, and I only highlighted one, which is proofread. That reading out loud, it may be a dry document, it may have bullet points. But proofread it, and have a friend proofread it. Okay? Make it easy to read, visually attractive, use action words, be consistent. Have one. Once you have one, keep it up to date. Have it be your reference. Then make a copy of it with the name of the job you're applying for and edit it to that. If you think of some new clever way of saying something, incorporate it in your master version of your resume. Maybe your master version of your resume is 2 pages long, but you keep every time you apply for something, you pull out extraneous material and you tighten it to 1 page. Okay? When this says never delete anything, that means that master version can become multiple pages long. But do not allow any one resume to leave your hands and have it be 3 pages long. Okay? 2 at the max. And really, probably at this stage of your career, it should be a 1-page resume. It should be on one side of 1 page. Okay. Here's some things not to do. That's that thing about personal information. But here's the main one. Misrepresent or exaggerate. And if you list awards and scholarships, make sure it's clear. Make sure how it relates. I mean, maybe it's a really good thing. Okay? Let's say you graduate from our department with distinction. Say graduated with distinction. But make sure people understand what these sorts of things mean. So graduating distinction is actually because of service to the department, exemplary service. Okay, that's one of my favorite words, exemplary. I like that. So include that if you do something exemplary. So here's some good CV examples. We're running out of time. But notice, this is dry and to the point. I like things to be formatted like this. I separate it like this. I'm pretending I'm Hector here, right? And the education, dry to the point, fellowships and honors. These look like good honors, so that's why they included them. Don't include everything, just the good ones. It's a resume, okay? Research experience and a list. Each one has a title, a time, and then a bullet point. Let me show you another one. This is a physics major resume, Okay? This. Wouldn't we want to do the formatting so this is more fun? Of course we would. So that's what you do, right? But the dry stuff up at top, a summary, that's fine. I might not have done that. I might put education details next, right? Contact info, education details, but professional skills, okay? This bullet list is not wrong for a resume. That's what the cover letter is for. You can write coherent sentences there. The resume can be this bullet list. This might be the only thing somebody reads. Okay? I'll leave you with a few more thoughts. One is, where are these jobs? Okay? And once again, spsnational.org has a list of jobs. It's searchable. usajobs.government is government jobs. These are national labs. This is a good place for physicists to look for jobs. Sciencecareers.org. We said that the job titles often have engineer in them. Do not be afraid to dip your toe in the water of engineering jobs. IEEE or engineerjobs.com. If you remember just one, remember spsnational.org. Graduate programs. We didn't talk about tailoring this to get into graduate school, but I want to point out there are pages, 3 pages about grad school steps. From here at Sonoma State, there is also 2 places where you can go out and find out what grad programs exist. One is gradschoolshopper.com and one is PhysLink. Okay? Those are 2 important things if you're interested in graduate programs in our field. If you're interested in teaching opportunities, number 1, you should talk to me. Number 2, we have a grant from this body, which is the Physics Teacher Education Coalition, PhysTech. Number 3, there's grant money on campus for the Noyce Scholarship Program, which is about making STEM teachers. Finally, GRE physics subject test. Not everyone's going to do this, but this is also related to MCAT and SATs. But the GRE physics subject test is hard. Get 2 practice tests. Start studying early. Take a timed one early. It will kick your behind. You will be like, wait, I thought I knew physics. Okay? You will then go through and review every physics class you have had, taking 2 to 5 pages of notes of each. If you've had my classes, you already have those pages of notes. Okay? You will review your intro calc-based book. You will work on quick problem-solving prowess. You will get a solved problems book. You will get one of the Sean series or something that's solved problems in physics, and you will read and solve the problems and look at the answers. Okay? At the end of that, you will take the timed test again about 2 weeks before the GRE, and you will find out how well you are doing, and if you take too slow. And if you do, in the GRE physics exam, you've got to portion out your time and decide to not answer the really difficult problems and do well on the problems that you can solve. Okay? There's a lot more to that. But to finish up on final thoughts, pursue all these opportunities. There are so many opportunities in our physics department. What are they? There are internships locally. They're the fact that we've gone to grad school, that if you're interested in it, we help you with it. That jobs, we're starting to put these materials together, and the particular governing bodies of these things are putting materials together to help you with what could be very hard. But you are in charge of all of this. Your career is yours to make. And so this is to help you find the tools and to start having the right questions to solve this on your own. And if I leave you with one thing, proofreading and reading each other's work is the most important thing you can do. So find a group. If you're not comfortable talking to people within the physics major, get comfortable. Say, I know this is difficult, but I'm happy to trade with you. If I read your document, will you read mine? Okay? That's the kind of thing that we need to have. And take advantage of the resources available. I'd like to thank you today. And we'll end the main thing there, and we'll have a topical discussion if anyone wants for the next 10 minutes. Okay. All right, thank you.